Hello, welcome. My name is Sarah Sprong, and I'm our VP of Customer Experience at Visible Network Labs. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the partner platform with the Together with Veterans use case. We have already added members and collected data in your community, so now what? So when you log into your platform, you can go to the Analyze area, and in this section of the platform, you'll be able to look at specific partnerships around veteran suicide prevention. You'll be able to look at key players, how different work groups work together, how you can leverage resources, and look for opportunities to improve that coordination. You have a few selections of what you can do with your data when you get into this section. You can go ahead and go into the charts and graphs area. And this is where you can visualize any data that is what we call non-relational. So any single choice, multiple choice, or open-ended question that was asked in your survey. So right here is showing which resources your organization can contribute. So you can visualize that as a pie chart, a column chart, or a bar chart. You're also able to change different settings like colors or label rotations as well. If you wanted to view open-ended data, it shows that as a table here. So this question is asking if there's any other organizations or groups that were not part of the survey who should possibly be part of the network moving forward. And this shows the listing of those two organizations that did answer that question. So again, that's how you can kind of visualize those types of questions. Within your project, you also have the ability to look at some network scores. So a few of these scores are in relation to kind of how connected that organization is to other members. So one of those scores is what we call degree centrality. And this is the percentage of ties that this organization has to others in the network. So the Together with Veterans Coalition in this group, in this network, is connected to 90% of other organizations in this network. So there's only one node, one other organization that they are not connected to, but they're really well connected. And then you see that the disabled American vets are connected to 70% of the network, but that the community college and then the medical center administration is only connected to about a third of the network. And that's okay because not everybody needs to be connected to every other organization, right? So the next score we show here is in degree centrality. So in degree centrality, when you're looking at a network map and it has arrows, think of it of all the arrows going into that circle. So all the partners, all the organizations that chose this organization as a partner. So for instance, the Regional Medical Center Emergency Services was chosen 6 times by other partners. As well as the Together as Veterans Coalition. 6 organizations chose the TWV as a partner. Whereas if you sort by out degree centrality is the number of organizations that organization picked as a partner. So for the Together with Veterans example here, they picked 8 organizations as a partner, and then 6 organizations picked them as a partner. So that's how you can kind of read those in and out degree scores. And again, if you're looking at a network map, think of it as the direction of the arrow. Is the line with the arrow leaving the circle, or is the line with the arrow coming towards that circle? And that's how you can kind of differentiate the in or the out degree. And you can see here that there's a couple organizations that have a 0 on the out degree, and that's because they did not answer the survey. So they did not report on any connections, so they will not have any scores reported there. But you can see that other organizations chose them as a partner. So we're still able to report back on perceptions of that organization and their connectivity, even if that organization didn't answer the survey themselves. One question we did ask was around this organization's level of power or influence around veteran suicide prevention work. And so these are scored by 1 to 4, and those with the highest score are perceived the most valuable in this area by their partners. So you can see that the disabled American vets, as well as the heart counseling, were perceived as the highest around power and influence, whereas the community college has the least amount of perceived power and influence by their partners. And so if you look at the whole network scores, we have a couple here to report on. One is around density. And so that's looking at the whole network connectivity score. So if every single partner in that network, selected every other organization as a partner, that would be 100%. But we know that that is not feasible time-wise or just capacity-wise to maintain and nurture that many connections. And so it's really taking this density score and looking at it if it's right for your community. If there's not a lot of connectivity happening and there's definitely opportunity to grow, and you add new partners, then that density score will change or evolve over time. But the goal is never to get that density score to be 100% because, again, it's not efficient to have every partner be connected to every other partner. Um, and then you have the overall power and influence score. Scores of around 75% or above are considered the most positive. And so this network has some room for growth around the perceptions of power and influence and to kind of increase that so that others really see the value that other organizations bring to the network and how they can leverage that value to achieve the goals of the network. So if address information was provided for the organizations in the survey, then you're able to do a GIS map. This is showing a network map overlaid over a geographic map. So for this use case, it's taking place kind of in the metro area of Denver. And so you can kind of see how these different organizations are connected in this geographic area. So if we're really serving veterans over in this Arvada area, we can see already that we don't have any organizations that are kind of located there. So that might already be a service gap for us. If we notice that we should be serving more areas in the Broomfield, Westminster area, right, we might reach out to organizations or VSOs or veteran service groups or nonprofits or law enforcement or whatnot in that area to see how we can build our presence there to make sure that we're serving the veterans there that need us. And so you can select to show which questions you want to show to represent the lines between the circles. So right now it's just kind of reporting all connections between organizations. But if I wanted to specifically see those who are working on veteran suicide prevention, I would click here, select that question from my dropdown. This way. And then I would go ahead and I would just show that selection here. So now I'm only showing the connections of those who have worked on veteran suicide prevention in the past or currently. And so if I only wanted to show currently, then I can take that away and then I can see, oh, okay, we really need to start implementing some new initiatives up north. Whereas, you know, between Denver and Wheat Ridge, that seems to be already occurring. That's one way of looking at that. You're also able to kind of layer on any what we call base layers. So you can do like a health factors ranking, average life expectancy, the percent that over 65% of that county is 65 and older. So that's a good use case to see if there's a need to maybe add an aging agency into this network or not. To kind of make sure that we're representing all ages of our veteran population as well. You're also able to filter your data. You can filter your data by any attributes that were added. So for this use case and yours, there's going to be some address information as well as an org group type. And so if you really only wanted to look at the connectivity between certain types of organizations, you can filter the data in that way. And just show that you only want to see, you know, how Together with Veterans is working with other veterans organizations and maybe these other service organizations. It's going to take a minute to kind of catch up, but I'm going to go ahead and just deselect this one because that will help. And then you can zoom in or out really easily to kind of take get a more narrowed view of a specific geographic area if you would like. Then you're also able to kind of change different settings. So if you wanted to change different labels, you can also choose to show labels or not. And then you can choose the label colors or the line colors as well. That's the GIS map. Now I'm going to go into the network map real quick. And so the network map is showing a bunch of circles and lines between them. And so I'm going to reset everything here because I kind of did some different filtering there, and make sure that all of my organizations are showing in my filter. Okay, so when you get to this map, you can kind of see there's a bunch of circles and lines between them. So what does that mean? So the circles represent organizations that were invited to take the network survey. And then the lines between those circles represent a relationship that was reported. And so you can select to kind of filter down to narrow specifically to a specific type of relationship that was reported, or right now it's just showing any and all relationships that were reported. So for instance, I'm going to kind of go ahead and go back to that use case of working on veteran suicide prevention work. And I'm going to specifically only show the connections between those who work on veteran suicide, either currently or in the past. And then I'm going to go ahead and choose to color my nodes by a group type. And so now I can see, okay, how are these different sectors working together around veteran suicide prevention? And who's kind of coordinating that? And I can kind of get an idea that if I take away the Together with Veterans node, I can kind of see that there's a little less coordination of activities than if I added them back in. There's a lot of connectivity happening specifically to and from this organization. And so right now I'm also sizing the nodes by centrality. So what that's doing is that it is the larger the circle, the more connections that that organization has to others in the network. So the smaller nodes have a little less connectivity to others, whereas this Together with Veterans node is quite larger because they're connected to, again, 90% of the network. So they do have that larger connectivity there. So then again, you can also filter the data by different attributes here, or different cities or zip codes. So if you really want to look at service areas, you can also, again, I want to look to see specifically how just law enforcement or mental and behavioral health are working together around this, maybe with business, and then you can kind of play around and see who's really coordinating efforts and who's not. And if you added in social services, does that help? Looks like social services actually does help coordinate veteran suicide prevention efforts between businesses, law enforcement, and mental and behavioral health. So that's a really interesting finding. And you can kind of play around and see, okay, if we added in veterans organizations, how much more does coordination happen, and vice versa. So really being able to go in and kind of take away the different groupings and filter by those will really give you a good indication of how specific groups are working together. And then you can, again, filter in the different lines between the nodes on the types of activities they're working on, or possibly you want to look at if they're referring people to each other. You can look at those who are only, these are, this is representing that the Together with Veterans group refers veterans to all these other organizations, because that's where the line is going out of. So a lot of fun things that you can do there. And what I'm going to do is go back to just kind of showing all relationships for just one moment. And then I'm going to go into the settings area, because what you can do is you can do a couple different things. You can change the font size for these labels. You can make them really big. You can make them really small. You can change the label colors. So if you wanted to make these red, you can. You can change all of those. And then you can also choose to show the labels or not. So if you wanted to make something more publicly available and didn't want to necessarily show the acronym attached to that organization, you can take the labels off. You can also, if you wanted to, take away the arrows and just kind of have just a line between them and not necessarily showing the direction of that line. And then at any point in time, you can take a snapshot of your picture. So if you decide that you really like these, but you kind of wanted to get them more spread out, you can decide to pin the nodes, and that will kind of lock them in place so that they won't move around. And then you can also even play around and kind of move them around if you wanted to get them in a different setup. You can definitely, or move the whole map around. And then you can click this button here and you can download an image of the map that you just drew. And so you can also, you click away from this nodes, you can show an ego map for each organization. So that just means I'm going to look, if I click on the Chamber of Commerce here and I click on them, that is showing me just the network of Chamber of Commerce and who they chose and the connections between their partners. So this is showing me that the Chamber of Commerce is actually embedded in a really coordinated ecosystem of themselves, right? Because not only are they connected to others, but others in their network are also connected to one another. And then you can just click a node back out and then you can go back to that full map. But if you click on this one, you can see that they're even more coordinated with one another. But then if you took out Together with Veterans, you could see that, their network is a little bit less coordinated. So Together with Veterans is really helping this organization coordinate their own network as well. So you can kind of just play around and click around and kind of get some more information or kind of dive deeper into any one organization. You can also click this button here to show what we call details for the node. So if you click on the node, instead of it going to its ego map, it's going to bring up a little box here and it's going to give me information about them. So it's going to tell me what organization type they're from, if there's an address located with it, and then if there is any scores attached to them as well. And then I can easily go to what we call a member profile for that organization, which is just a quick snapshot profile that tells you how that organization answered their survey and showing their ego map and their connection to the larger network as well. And member profiles are actually really useful and helpful because if you were going to go to a community meeting, you could go and print off or save as a PDF the member profile for all the organizations that would be in attendance. And then you'd kind of get an idea of how connected are they, what level of involvement did they say that they're willing to contribute, or what types of resources could I ask them about, right? So if we're having a community meeting that involves an upcoming event, right, that's going to need some volunteers, we can pull this member profile for the disabled American veterans and say, hey, it looks like you're able to contribute some volunteers. Would you be able to see if anybody would be willing to help out with this event that we have coming up? And so you can use this information to kind of leverage the resources that everybody is bringing, but also look to see, okay, they're really coordinated with the American Legion, but they're really only aware of Together with Veterans. So how can we bring them more integrated into the work that we're doing? And so you can use these profiles as a good way to kind of strategize or bring to the meeting to say, hey, what kind of trainings does this organization need? And then you can go and look to see what they self-selected for that question, or what trainings they might have said they already partake in. So member profiles are really helpful, and every organization in your data has a member profile. So that's a really fun way to get to the member profiles. You can also get to the member profiles by clicking into the member area. Once it loads here, I'll show you that. Click into the member area, and then you can easily just click any of these organizations. You click these buttons here, you can easily go to their member profile this way. So you don't even necessarily need to go into their area or the maps to get it, but you can just easily go, I'm going to meet with the Chamber of Commerce. I need to get their member profile, and you can click to it that way. And you can save those as a PDF, or you can print them. You can email them out and share as well with the organizations. Let me go back to this analyze real quick because there's just one more thing I wanted to show you in the network maps area, and then our walkthrough is complete. So in the network map area, I mentioned that you're able to show relational questions, and these are any questions that was asked of an organization and their partners. And then we have what's called non-relational questions. So again, those single choice, multiple choice, or open-ended questions. And so here you're able to select a single choice or a multiple choice question that you would also like to show on the map. So for instance, if you wanted to see what resources organizations can contribute, you can select specific ones So if we wanted to see expertise in suicide prevention, we can see who brings those. It's together, it's the CSC as well as um, our county health social work also brings that as a resource. And so what's great about that is then you can leverage, okay, back to our scenario of that community event, who can contribute volunteers for us? And then we can kind of see, okay, out of these organizations, just going to pin these notes so we can kind of see them a little better. We can see that the Disabled American Vet and the American Legion can contribute volunteers. So we can kind of knock on their door and say, hey, we have an event coming up. Are you able to reach out to your group and see if anyone can volunteer for this upcoming event? Likewise, if there's anybody who can contribute training and education, we want to know that too, right? So this the social worker is able to contribute training as well as the sheriff's department. So if we can kind of rely on them to kind of help us host those trainings or pass along that education to even the broader community as well. So that's a different way of kind of layering on a different data point onto your maps as well. And so then the other question we asked is the level of involvement that an organization would be willing to contribute. So you can select that as your what you want to show your halos as. And then if you wanted to see, okay, I want to get together a new work group to say around a new initiative, who's going to serve on this work group? Okay, well, the Chamber of Commerce is the only one who said that they would serve on a work group. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to knock on their door and we're going to say, hey, there's a work group that we're trying to put together. Would you mind leading this task force? And they would say, sure, I would definitely love that because I'm willing and able to contribute that. You might say, who's willing to implement that new program? Wow, there's so many organizations that said they are willing to implement a new program. Okay, so now we just got to get a program ready to go. And then we can reach out to these organizations and say, are you willing to pilot this in your workflow to help enhance our objectives? Then you can also say, who wants to meet once a month? And so then you can say, okay, now we can host monthly meetings versus those who might want to meet once a quarter. So then you can kind of get a better idea of how organizations are able and willing to show up to the table as well. And so again, you can filter your data any way. You can do different settings, and then you can take a snapshot of that image as well. So if I got it narrowed down and I wanted it to show exactly what I wanted and I wanted to report this back out, I can take a screenshot of that and share it out. Lastly, you can export your raw data right here. So if you click on this and you click on project data, you can go ahead and export that and it will give you the raw data for your project. That's all for our walkthrough today. I really appreciate the time of watching this video. Feel free to reach out to our team if you'd like to schedule your own individualized walkthrough of your community's data. Thanks again.